I did it because I loved my son. Because when you're a father, you don't give up on your kids, no matter how far they fall. Or at least, that's what I believed. My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm 65 years old, living in a small ranch house in North Dallas, Texas. For 18 months, I watched my son Michael battle what I thought was the hardest fight of his life. Addiction, the kind that destroys families, ends careers, steals futures. I made him a promise the day he admitted himself to rehab. I'd do whatever it took to get him clean. I'd make sure he had the best treatment money could buy. Michael was 35, my only child. His mother, Janet, passed from breast cancer when he was 12. I raised him alone after that, worked double shifts at the construction company, made sure he had everything he needed, good schools, football camps, college tuition. He'd had a good life, a wife, Sarah, a beautiful son, Jake, who just turned 8. Then the accident happened, or so I thought. Michael hurt his back at work, got prescribed pain medication, and somewhere along the way the pills took over. That's the story he told me, anyway. Serenity Hills Rehabilitation Center cost $2,200 a month. It wasn't covered by insurance. The brochure Michael showed me promised intensive therapy, holistic healing, a 90-day program that could stretch longer if needed. Michael had been there for 18 months. Still struggling. Dad, he'd tell me during our monthly visits. But I'm getting there. I can feel it. I was retired from my construction foreman job, living on a pension that barely covered my mortgage and bills. But Michael needed help. So I took a job working security at a warehouse 3 nights a week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My left hip screamed every time I stood up from the security desk chair. Old injury from a fall-off scaffolding in my 30s. Some nights I could barely walk to my truck when my shift ended. But every time I transferred that $2,200 to Serenity Hills' account, every time Michael hugged me in that parking lot and said, "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't do this without you." I felt like I was winning, like I was being the father Janet would have wanted me to be. The visits were always the same. First Saturday of every month, I'd drive the 40 minutes to Serenity Hills, a sprawling facility on the outskirts of Plano. Michael would meet me in the parking lot. We'd sit in my truck, talk for an hour. He looked good, healthy. His eyes were clear. He'd gained back the weight he'd supposedly lost during his addiction. He talked about group therapy, about his counselor, Dr. Stevens, about the other residents who were becoming like family. "Why don't we ever go inside?" I asked once, maybe 6 months in. "I'd love to see where you're staying. Meet Dr. Stevens." Michael's face had clouded. "Dad, it's against policy during treatment phase. Family can only come to designated areas. It's part of maintaining boundaries, you know? Helps us focus on recovery without outside interference." Made sense to me. I didn't push, but there were other things. Small things that didn't quite add up, though I didn't let myself think about them too hard. Like how Michael's phone was always off when I tried to call during the week. "No phones allowed except Saturdays," he'd explained. Or how he always wore long sleeves, even in Texas summer heat. "They keep the AC freezing in there," he'd say. Or how Jake, his 8-year-old son, never got to visit. "Sarah thinks it's better if Jake doesn't see me like this," Michael told me. Doesn't want to confuse him. Sarah, Michael's ex-wife, lived in Houston with Jake. They'd divorced 2 years ago, before Michael's supposed addiction started. Amicable split. Or so, Michael said. She'd gotten primary custody. Michael had weekend visitation before he went to rehab. I'd called Sarah once, early on, to see how she was handling things. "It's hard on Jake," she'd said, her voice tired. "He doesn't understand why his dad can't visit anymore. But I know Michael needs to focus on getting better. Thank you for helping him, Thomas. I know the financial burden must be difficult." I'd assured her it was worth it. "He's my son," I'd said. "I'd do anything." That was true then. I still believed every word. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything changed. I'd just gotten home from my night shift, was making coffee in my kitchen when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Thomas Brennan?" A woman's voice, professional, crisp. Speaking. Mr. Brennan, this is Patricia Walsh. I'm the director of Serenity Hills Rehabilitation Center. I'm calling because there's been a significant discrepancy in our records, and I need to speak with you about your son, Michael Brennan. My heart dropped. Is he okay? Did something happen? There was a pause. Mr. Brennan, I need you to understand something. Michael Brennan has never been a resident at this facility. The kitchen went silent except for the coffee maker sputtering. I'm sorry, what? We have no record of anyone named Michael Brennan ever being admitted to Serenity Hills. Not now. Not 18 months ago. Not ever. But we've been receiving monthly payments of $2,200 from your bank account for that entire time. The payments go to an account that was set up using our facility's name. But it's not affiliated with us. Someone has been impersonating our organization. I sat down hard. That's impossible. I visit him there every month. First Saturday. He meets me in your parking lot. Sir. Her voice softened. Our facility has security cameras. I can tell you with absolute certainty that your son has never been inside this building. If someone is meeting you in our parking lot, they're using it as a convenient location, but they are not and have never been a patient here. She kept talking. Something about filing a police report, about fraud investigation, about how this had come to light during an audit. But I couldn't hear her anymore. The blood was rushing too loud in my ears. I hung up, sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Michael and I used to do his homework when he was a kid, where Janet and I used to drink coffee every Sunday morning, where I'd sat and cried the night she died. My son had been lying to me for 18 months. I called in sick to work that night. First time in 30 years I'd ever done that. Instead, I drove to Plano, to Serenity Hills, at 3 in the afternoon on a random Tuesday, parked across the street at a Starbucks, ordered a coffee I didn't drink, waited. At 4:15, Michael's truck pulled into the Serenity Hills parking lot. Same silver Toyota Tacoma he'd had for 5 years. He parked near the back, away from the entrance. A woman got out of the passenger side. Late 20s, blonde, wearing workout clothes. They stood by the truck talking for a few minutes. Laughing, he put his arm around her waist, kissed her neck. Then they got back in the truck and drove away. I followed them, stayed 3 cars back, the way they do in movies, though my hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the steering wheel. They drove to an apartment complex in Richardson. Nice place, newer construction. They went inside together. Unit 2847. I sat in my truck for 2 hours. When they came back out, they were dressed to go out. Michael wore a button-down shirt I'd bought him for Christmas. They drove to a bar and grill, one of those sports bar chains. Through the window, I could see them at a table, drinking beers, watching a game on the big screen. Michael's shoulder dipped when he walked, that distinctive shrug and lift motion he'd had since his old football injury in high school. Left shoulder never quite healed right after he separated it senior year. I knew that walk like I knew my own heartbeat. I drove home that night and didn't sleep, just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how my son, my boy who I'd raised alone, who I'd sacrificed everything for, could look me in the eye once a month and lie, could hug me and thank me while stealing from me, could let me work night shifts with a bad hip at 65 years old while he spent my money on his girlfriend and bar tabs. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called a private investigator. Name was Frank Torres. Came recommended by a guy I used to work with whose wife had cheated on him. Frank's office was above a dry cleaner in East Dallas. He listened to my story without interrupting, took notes on a yellow legal pad. How much you want to know? He asked when I finished. Everything, I said. I want to know what he's doing, where my money's going, what the truth is. All of it. This is gonna hurt, Frank warned. You sure you're ready? I've been hurt before, I said. I buried my wife. I can handle whatever my son's done. Frank was thorough. Over the next 3 weeks, he built a file 2 inches thick. He gave it to me on a Saturday morning at a Denny's off I-35. Slid it across the table while I tried to eat eggs I couldn't taste. Michael didn't have a drug problem. Never had. The prescription bottles he'd shown me 18 months ago, the ones with his name on them that he said got him hooked, Fake. Printed labels. Filled with Advil. Frank had photos of the bottles in Michael's bathroom trash from when he'd gone through the apartment complex dumpster. The girlfriend's name was Vanessa Ortiz, 27 years old, bartender at a club in Deep Ellum. They'd been together for 2 years, since before Michael's divorce. Sarah had found out about the affair, which is why they split. But Sarah didn't know about the fake rehab. Michael had told her the same story he told me, that he was getting treatment, that he couldn't see Jake because he needed to focus on recovery. The money, my $2,200 a month for 18 months, $39,600 total, was going to an account Michael had set up using a fake business registration. Serenity Hills Treatment Services, LLC. Close enough to the real facility's name to fool a bank transfer. He'd been depositing the money, then withdrawing it as cash. Frank had bank records. What was Michael doing with the money? Gambling. He had a poker problem. Owed $40,000 to a casino in Oklahoma. Been making payments from my money. The rest went to Vanessa's rent, to bar tabs, to a lifestyle that looked nothing like addiction recovery. Frank had recordings too. He'd put a listening device in Michael's truck during a grocery store visit. Got 3 weeks of conversations. In one, Michael was on the phone with someone, laughing. My old man's so gullible, man. Works night shifts at 65 with a bad hip to give me money. Thinks he's saving my life. Honestly, sometimes I almost feel bad. Almost. But not bad enough to get a real job when I can just cry to Dad about my opioid struggle once a month. Vanessa's voice in the background. Your dad's sweet though. Feels wrong, Michael. He'll be fine. He's got his pension. Besides, what's he gonna do? Stop believing in me. He's never done that in his life. I listened to that recording 5 times in Frank's office. Each time, something inside me turned colder, but Frank had one more piece of information. Your son's planning something, he said. In 2 weeks, he's supposed to have his graduation ceremony from rehab. He's been telling Vanessa he's going to hit you up for $50,000 for a sober living house. Says you've been setting money aside for it. Once he gets that, they're moving to Las Vegas. Already got an apartment deposit down out there. I drove to Sarah's house in Houston that afternoon. She answered the door with Jake right behind her, a little boy with Michael's dark hair and Janet's green eyes. Thomas! Sarah seemed surprised, but welcomed me in. Is everything okay? Is Michael all right? Can we talk alone? I asked, glancing at Jake. She sent him to play in the backyard. We sat at her kitchen table. I told her everything, showed her some of Frank's evidence, watched her face go from confusion to horror to rage. That son of a bitch, whispered. I've been telling Jake his daddy's sick, that he's getting better. Jake writes him letters every week, and Michael never responds. Now I know why. He was never there. What about Jake? I asked. Legally, where does he stand? Michael has visitation rights every other weekend, but he hasn't exercised them in 18 months. Says he can't because of rehab. If Michael goes to jail. She looked at me. Thomas, are you going to press charges? Yes. She nodded slowly. Then I'll petition for full custody. Termination of his parental rights. Jake deserves better than a father who abandoned him. Jake came to the doorway. Grandpa? Want to see my Lego set? I looked at this little boy, 8 years old, who wrote letters to a father who didn't care enough to read them, who believed his dad was fighting to get better, when really, his dad was just fighting to steal more. Yeah, buddy, I said. I'd love to see it. I went to the police the next day. Detective Maria Rodriguez listened to everything, reviewed Frank's evidence, and nodded grimly. Mr. Brennan, your son has committed fraud, identity theft, in setting up that fake business, and what we call exploitation of an elderly person in Texas. That last one is a serious felony when it involves over $30,000, which this does. What happens now? I asked. We wait for his graduation ceremony. He's planning to ask you for $50,000, right? When he does that, when he attempts to defraud you again, we arrest him. We'll have officers in place. The evidence is solid, Mr. Brennan. He's going away for this. What about the money I already gave him? The $39,000, $600. Detective Rodriguez grimaced. That's evidence now. You can file a civil suit to try to recover it after the criminal case is settled. But honestly, legal fees would eat most of it. Might take years. I thought about it. Keep it. Use it to make sure he stays in prison longer. She looked at me carefully. You're sure? I worked those night shifts because I thought I was saving my son's life, I said. Turns out I was just funding his vacation. I don't want that money back. I want justice. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Michael. Hey, Dad. Great news. Dr. Stevens says I'm ready to graduate from the program. We're having a ceremony next Saturday. Can you come? Of course, I said, my voice steady. I wouldn't miss it. There's one more thing. He paused. I'm going to need a sober living situation when I leave here. Dr. Stevens recommends a house here in Plano. It's $50,000 for the first year. Includes counseling and support. I know it's a lot, but it's the difference between staying clean and relapsing. I know you've been setting money aside. Do you think? I'll bring a check, I said. Thanks, Dad. You're saving my life. I mean that. Saturday came. I dressed in my good khakis and a button-down shirt. The same kind of outfit I used to wear to Michael's football games when he was in high school. Drove to Serenity Hills under a clear October sky. The parking lot was more crowded than usual. I spotted Detective Rodriguez in an unmarked car near the entrance. 2 uniformed officers in a police car at the back. My heart hammered as I parked. Michael's truck pulled in 10 minutes later. He got out, came over to my truck with a big smile. Vanessa stayed in the passenger seat. Hey, Dad. He hugged me. I made myself hug him back. Come on, let's go inside. Ceremony's in the main hall. Actually, I said, I have something for you first. I pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check I'd written that morning. $50,000. Made out to Michael Brennan. His eyes lit up when he saw it. Dad, I don't know what to say. You could start with the truth, I said quietly. His smile faltered. What? The truth, Michael. About where you've really been for the last 18 months. About Vanessa. About the gambling debts. About the fact that you've never been a patient at Serenity Hills. His face went white. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. Michael Brennan. Detective Rodriguez appeared at his elbow, badge out. 2 uniformed officers flanked him. You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and exploitation of an elderly person. You have the right to remain silent. I watched them cuff my son. Watched Vanessa get out of the truck, screaming. Watched Michael's eyes meet mine. Seen the panic there. The desperation. Dad, please. Don't do this. I can explain. Explain what? I said. How you let me work night shifts at 65 years old with a bad hip so you could gamble? How you laughed about your gullible old man with your girlfriend? How you abandoned your son and let him think you were sick? He had no answer. They put him in the back of the police car. Vanessa, in another car, charged as an accomplice. Detective Rodriguez seized the check from my hand. Evidence. The trial took 4 months. The prosecutor was aggressive, armed with Frank's recordings, bank records, fake business documents, everything. Michael's public defender tried to argue that Michael had made a mistake, that he had a gambling addiction that made him desperate. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, found him guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in state prison, 3 years probation after release. Vanessa got 2 years as an accomplice. Sarah successfully terminated Michael's parental rights while he was awaiting sentencing. The judge agreed that Michael had willfully abandoned Jake for 18 months, had used fake circumstances to avoid his responsibilities as a father. On a cold day in February, I drove back to Houston, knocked on Sarah's door. She let me in, and there was Jake, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Jake, Sarah said gently, Grandpa Thomas has something to ask you. I sat down across from him. He looked so much like Janet. Same eyes, same serious expression when he was thinking hard. Hey, buddy, I said. How would you feel about coming to live with me in Dallas? You and me? We'd be roommates. I've got that extra bedroom. And there's a good elementary school 2 blocks away. Jake looked at his mom. She nodded, eyes wet. What about Dad? Jake asked quietly. I'd promised myself I wouldn't lie to this kid. He'd had enough lies. Your dad made some really bad choices, Jake. He hurt people. He's going to be gone for a while. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Jake thought about it. Would I still see Mom? Every weekend you want, Sarah said. Plus holidays, summer, anytime. Dallas isn't far. Okay, Jake said. He looked at me. Can I bring my Legos? I felt something loosen in my chest. All of them. Moving Jake in took a week. Sarah helped me convert my old workshop into a bedroom. We painted it blue because Jake liked the color of the sky. Set up his bed, his desk, shelves for all those Legos. Enrolled him in Morrison Elementary, where the third-grade teacher, Mrs. Chen, promised to help him catch up on anything he'd missed. Jake was quiet those first few weeks. Nightmares sometimes. He'd wake up crying, asking for his mom. I'd sit with him, read to him until he fell back asleep. Some nights I felt completely out of my depth. I'd raised Michael alone, sure, but that was 30 years ago. I barely remembered how to help with homework, how to pack school lunches that weren't just sandwiches and chips. But we figured it out together. I kept working my security job, but only 2 nights a week now instead of 3. Sarah helped with money for Jake's expenses, and slowly, gradually, Jake started to relax, started to smile more, started to call my house home. One Saturday in April, we were in the backyard. I was finally tackling some repairs I'd been putting off for years. Jake was helping me, or trying to, handing me tools and asking questions about everything. Grandpa, he said, holding the level while I checked a fence post. Are you going to leave too? I looked at him. What do you mean? Mom left when I was little. Then Dad left. Everybody leaves. I put down my hammer, sat on the grass even though my hip protested. Jake, look at me. He did. Those green eyes so serious. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Not to Vegas, not to rehab, nowhere. You're stuck with me, buddy. That okay? He nodded. Yeah. That's okay. Good. Now hand me that screwdriver. The Phillips head, the one that looks like a plus sign. That night, after Jake was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a beer, thought about the last 18 months, about how I'd worked myself into the ground believing I was saving my son, about how Michael had thrown away everything. His marriage, his son, his freedom, his father. All for what? For gambling money, for a lifestyle he couldn't afford. I'd lost my son. Not to addiction, but to something worse. To greed. To selfishness. To the kind of casual cruelty that lets you laugh about your elderly father working night shifts while you steal from him. But I'd gained Jake. A second chance to be the kind of father Michael needed but never had. The kind who shows up, who keeps promises, who doesn't lie. I'd worked 3 nights a week for 18 months, climbing in and out of that security desk chair with my bad hip, giving everything I had to support what I thought was my son's recovery. Turns out, I was just funding his gambling addiction and his girlfriend's rent. But now I work those same 2 nights a week. My hip still aches, my back still protests. But every dollar I earn goes toward Jake's future. His education, his baseball equipment, his Lego sets, his field trips, the life he deserves. The people who betrayed me are behind bars. Justice was served. But the real victory isn't Michael's 5-year sentence. It's Jake, asleep upstairs in a room we painted together, surrounded by his Lego creations and his drawings of our house, our backyard, our life. I did it for my son once. I'm doing it for my grandson now. And this time, it's real. This time, it matters. This time, I'm actually saving someone's life.